Hello and welcome back to the Interior Design Podcast. Today our guest is Erin Froment, the co-founder of Black Dog Designs, who has come to talk to us about pub design. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here and to see you.
So catch up for the week because Cheryl's not here. So we're just going to catch up for the week with Erin. How are you doing? What are you getting up to at the moment?
I'm good. I've been all over the country this week. We've had a few handovers and we've got another one on Monday. So I was actually down in Southampton for snagging meeting yesterday, which went really well. And then we've got that handover on Monday. And then I also went to the Cranley, which is in Bournemouth, for their 2-week review, and it's looking lovely. It's doing very well, which is great news.
It's a proud moment, isn't it, when you've handed over and it's all done and it's lovely.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing better as a designer when somebody says outright how amazing the design is, because at the end of the day, that's what we all want, isn't it? Yeah. As designers, yeah.
Definitely. This week I went to the Noodle Bar on Saturday, which is a project that we've just finished designing in Colchester.
Lovely.
And it's like one of my favourite restaurants as well, you know, and you're like, oh my God, I'm designing my favourite restaurant. And they've extended it. And I was having dinner with a couple of friends and the owner was like, and I can't take credit for the design. This is my designer. And he was like telling everyone about it. And I'm like going, I'm not sure if I'm embarrassed or really proud.
Yeah, probably a bit of both.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that was a really cool design. Scarlett helped me with that. But yeah, no, it's really cool to see her face as well.
Yeah.
Going in.
It's always a lot of fun when it goes from plan, because we can see the space when we're looking at plans. We've been doing it for so long, haven't we? So when we look at the furniture and how it's laid out, but for other people, they can't read that the same way.
Isn't that weird? Like, we just had that done in my house. Me and my husband have had an extension, right? And I could just see it, and he's gone in there and like, oh, it's a bit smaller than I thought it was going to be. I'm like, no, that's exactly what I thought it was going to be like.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, it's really weird, isn't it? It's like a thing that you've got when you're designing.
Absolutely. I mean, even with my husband, it took a few years for the compromises to stop, because I used to have to show him what I wanted to do before we'd go ahead and do it, and now I go ahead and do it, and he's happy because we have forest wallpaper in the hallway and he loves it now, and it's all he trusts me. It is,
oh my God,
my favourite wallpaper.
Cool. Other things that I've been doing this week, I'm working on a really exciting project in Liverpool Street, which is it's actually a 5-story building, but the top and the bottom stories are toilets. And I think they might be the best toilets that I've ever designed. I'm like, oh my God, I love the toilets. The client's just gone with it and they just look amazing. And the rest of it is all, the 3 stories are 3 different. So the ground floor is the garden, and then the second floor is the amber bar, which we've done like backlit tobacco paneling.
Wow.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Watch out on social media. I'm going to be shouting about it. The third floor is what I'm doing at the moment. So the third floor is going to be like a restaurant bar, but it's got a lighter feel to it. So it's more teals and papers with birds on it by Romo. I can't remember the name of the paper, but yes.
That sounds so exciting, especially as you're focusing on the toilets, because they always get left behind. So they're lovely.
Oh my God, toilets.
Yeah.
They're so important, aren't they?
They are very important. I think that's where a lot of the time the budget is cut, and they should not be cut, because people remember what the toilets are, especially women, because we go in there, have a natter, and if it is horrendous, we remember that.
You don't stay in there, do you?
No. Yeah.
I think as well with toilets, it's like that whole look about if the toilets are crap, then what's the hygiene like almost? Exactly, it's almost like if the toilets aren't very good, well, you know, what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got 70s tiles still on the toilet walls, then what's in the kitchen? Because that is not what you want.
How gross is it going to be?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think toilets, I always say, unless somebody comes out of the toilets and says, have you seen the toilets? I haven't done my job properly.
Yeah, I totally agree.
That's got to happen.
Yeah. And I think recently with clients, because back like 5-8 years ago, they were definitely where the budgets were cut and focus it elsewhere. But recently, I think they've caught on the fact that actually the toilets are just as important. And if they're clean and tidy and functional, as well as the design factor, everybody appreciates it more. So, I would definitely say have a look at the toilets, because if they look horrible, that's what people are going to remember, even if the rest of it is all lovely.
So Erin is here today to educate us about pub design.
As best I can.
And I'll probably put in a little bit as well, because I've done a lot of pubs. I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the things, like some of your experience as well, because obviously I've done some pubs, but I think you do more pubs than me, and you work with a lot of the big pub groups on a regular basis, where I sort of dipped in and out of that, and I've done a lot of independent. So I'm quite interested to see what the difference is. In our experience.
I have been quite lucky over the years, because I've been doing this for now over 10 years. And when I first came into it, I didn't quite realise how much of a community the hospitality industry was. And it is very much a community. And it's the people you know, and the way that the pubs work and function. And it definitely helps that I did work in a pub for 5 years through college and uni. So I've been behind the bar.
Yeah. That is so important.
So
isn't it?
important.
It's I have worked with designers before who are like, oh no, I've got no interest in doing stuff like that. And I'm like, how can you not want to do that? Like, I really want to go in and go, can I just work in here for a day just so I can design it a bit better?
As long as you can still pull a pint, then you're good. Yeah.
Erin, what do you think the most important elements of pub design are?
Well, I think with pub design, the main focus and the heart of every site should be and is the bar. The bar is where you're selling the product and you're wanting everybody to buy, really. So your customer journey needs to be taking you to that heart of the pub. So I would say from entering the pub, if you can see the bar, fantastic. If you can't, you need to direct people towards that, because that is your selling point. So at all times, I mainly work for brewers. They want their badges to be seen, because that is what they're selling. They're keeping their brewery going as well. So that's how I would say the heart of the pub is the bar.
Cool. So what would you design around the bar? So you've got like the bar is the focal point where you go first.
Yeah.
And then what other areas of a pub do you have, like different zones? Because a lot of the pub groups have different zones, don't they? What are the zones that you do?
I mean, it's interesting, really, because I think it's a lot of pub design has developed a lot over since COVID, and everybody had to sit down, and it's kind of morphed into this different type of experience. So I've got a lot of previous history of how you want everyone to walk up to the bar, but now you can have a mixture of both. So whether or not you are going up to a stand to be greeted by someone, to be sat down, or if they still want the traditional pub walk up to the bar, be served, and then sit down. So I think with different brands is a different element of a journey. So in a traditional pub, your journey would be coming through from the entrance to see the bar if it's available and within that pub layout. So you could walk over to that. So you'd have mid-height furniture, which we've been using a lot more over the last few years, because it's not poser, but it's comfortable like dining. So we use that so that then they're still comfortable when people are walking past. And then off of that bar, then you go into dining areas or sports areas, depending on if they've got a large sports viewing or if there's pool tables or darts boards, which we'd always try and keep close enough to the bar, but separate, so that females as well, even if they do love sports, they don't always want to walk into a sports area, so then they can go off into the dining area or join the sports. So I'd say there's definitely layout choices depending on the client. With some of sort of more sports led, it is going to be sports, darts, pool table in one area, and then dining in the other. But at all points, the bar is still the heart of that. So then you kind of brand off of it. So that's the heart of the body, and then the rest of it sort of branches off from that. So that's how I would view it. But yeah.
Do you think that there's like this, there's a big thing about sort of men and women? Because when I was working for Green King, there was a lot of talk about kind of, well, we want to bring women back into the pubs. And it was really funny for me, because I'm like, well, don't women feel comfortable in pubs? Like, and actually, what's your experience of that?
I think it's a mixture. It definitely is the clientele for that area, because you can get some like bistro pubs, which it's going to be dog walkers as well. So there's a mixture. There's going to have men and women there. But we definitely do see in more of the sports led that is male dominating. So you're looking at like 80% drinking over 20% food. But if you're looking at 80% food over 20% dining, you're going to be over 20% drink, sorry. You're going to be looking more towards the females for some reason, the softer, the more comfortable, and the sports led always is harder. I don't necessarily think it is just men and women, but it is just sort of the natural. My husband goes off and watches sport. I don't tend to do that when I go to the pub. I go to have a bottle of wine, and a lot of my friends are the same. So it is kind of just the way that we are. I think it still, even though everything is more equal than it used to be, if a woman walks into a pub that there are all rowdy men contractors, not that I have an issue, I've contractors in the family, they're going to feel uncomfortable. So keeping that sort of separate, depending on clientele, is important.
So having like, so if you've got like different kinds, I mean, my local pub, for example, has got like one area where all the contractors go, which has got like a wooden floor and and a pool table and a jukebox, and dartboard, and then the other bit is more loungy and more restauranty, and it's got a carpet and it's sort of softer. So is that quite important in most pubs to do that?
Yeah, just to ensure that everybody that goes in there is comfortable, because I'm sure everybody has one local pub where women won't go into it, because as soon as they go in, all of the regulars look at them and it's very uncomfortable. So with a lot of the large brewers and companies that I work with, we don't want that. We want to make sure that everybody, any person, is comfortable when they walk in. So from entrance, rather than having that straight away impact of sports male dominated, no, we want that to be sort of the transitional area, so a bit of both, so that we can all mingle together, which is fine because a lot of mixed groups that do go in, but so that then females don't feel uncomfortable coming in. But also on the flip side, if it is too feminine, it also is not inviting to the males. So it's just finding that balance, really, that entrance area is an important thing to think of. If you've got an area for men, or men and women, but sports mainly, off to the left, and then dining, and if you need it to be family friendly as well, off to another side. So you've got a clear, comfortable walkway through to be able to choose what way you want to go, to where you want to either view TVs or have dinner with your family, or drinks with the ladies, which if there's a cocktail section, fantastic. Yeah.
Have you come across much? We sort of briefly touched on toilets. Have you come across much sort of the gender neutral thing? Because it's starting in the industry to kind of like really, you need a DDA, gender neutral. Some people are just going all out gender neutral toilets. Some people are like, no way, the women won't go in the men's, or they don't want to. Some people are saying that women are way worse than men in terms of tidiness.
And I've seen that for myself. There have one site that I have up north once. We kitted out the ladies' toilet so lovely. It had this beautiful wallpaper in all the cubicles. At the 6 months defect, out of the 8 cubicles, 6 of them had the wallpaper peeled off in the cubicles because they had a bet going. And in the gents, nothing had been touched. It was as if we had just done it. So the ladies were worse in that sense than the men, like 100%. And we'd done theirs even prettier and lovely, but they had a bet going to who could get the most wallpaper off in one go, which was so bizarre. I'd never seen that before. But yeah, I think.
But gender neutral in pubs, all the pubs that I've done have gone absolutely no way.
I've not seen it go into a pub yet.
Really?
And nor has the discussion for that. DDA toilets is a must-have. Mm-hmm. The only instances when we haven't been able to put that in is if it's a listed building and structurally there is just no way without causing damage to that pub. If you're working on a pub that isn't listed, doesn't have a DDA, it really needs to have a DDA toilet. Everybody needs to be able to go to the toilet. And I think that is a definite in pubs. The unisex toilets, I've had that in a cafe once, but that's because they were limited on space. So they had 5 sets of unisex toilets, but that was a cafe, that was not a pub, and I don't see it being done in a pub anytime soon. Maybe a bistro pub or something that's trying to be a bit different, but a traditional pub, I would say no, they would want to keep that separate still.
I did the White Hart in West Mersey recently, and I think they've gone for a bit of everything. Yeah. They've gone for gender neutral and male and female. Yeah. Because the guy who owns it also owns the Church Street Tavern in Colchester, and they've got quite a few gender neutral toilets in there. Yeah. But yeah, no, that was quite a thing for them. Yeah. And that's a pub, but it doesn't really look like a pub anymore. It's more of a bistro restaurant.
A bistro restaurant, yeah.
Which hotel.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think traditional pubs, and also because a lot of the time these projects are budget led, and if you've got existing toilets, existing gents, existing ladies, it's going to cost more to rearrange that to make it into unisex than it is to just refurb what you've got as existing. So
it's funny, isn't it? There a lot of the time they're like either side of the bar as well, like they're not together, which I find really odd.
That is so frustrating. And a lot of the time, I've had that on a recent one in Stotfold, where the gents' toilet was in the ladies' sort of dining area, so that then all of the men had to come from the sports area, which we were discussing before. The right-hand side of the pub was gents, and the left-hand side family and dining. And the gents had to go from the darts area all the way through to go to the other end of the dining. So in that factor, we actually did.
You swap them.
Yeah, we used the budget in the right way to make sure that that was the right way around. Because it just wasn't working in the dining area if you've got men going out for fags and then going to the toilet, and it doesn't give the right vibe. But you do have to work with what you've got. I think unisex toilets could work in the future. I don't think men are as dirty as you would maybe think they would be. All of the gents' toilets, other than the smell, are normally just as clean as the ladies.
They stink.
They do stink. I have been in way too many gents' toilets.
Me too. It's so bad, isn't it?
It is.
Like, yeah.
And always that dreaded having to go in and take photos after, for work purposes, to look at the tiles, to knock on the door and just check that there's no men in the urinals, because that's never happened to me, touch wood, to this day, and I do not want that to ever happen.
I think the other thing with the toilets is that with urinals you can actually get more toilets in for a space, and that works really well in terms of maximising the space. Whereas you can't do that with a women's toilet. So it's kind of like changing it is more expensive, like
Which
you say.
I guess is a good point as well for anybody that is looking to change toilets or alter it. It's definitely worth looking at building regulations, because for pubs and restaurants and bars, you need to have a certain percentage of urinals and sit downs for the gents and to the ladies, depending on the percentage of male and female in that pub. So if somebody's going to knock out some toilets in theirs, definitely look into how many you need to put back in, because you could be in trouble if you decide to drop out 2 urinals and you're not covering the amount of people that are in that pub. Because the amount of times I've done the maths on that just to check we can actually do it, because that will bite you in the butt otherwise.
It's section M, isn't it, of the building control?
Good memory. I think it might be. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Good memory. Thanks for that. I think it's section M. Or you would just consult with a building control officer, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If you can do it.
If in doubt, keep what's there as existing as best you can. And if you can't, like you said, contact somebody from building control to advise you on what you can and can't do. Because you don't want to be tripped up with something like that and having to redo it, which is not good for anybody.
No. Welcome back to the Interior Design Podcast.
Hello there.
We've just been talking about how we're both from Essex.
Yeah.
So if you don't like an Essex accent,
It's not
this is not the
so
podcast
for
for you. So Erin, I have a question. If somebody's designing their own pub and they can't afford to use a designer, or they don't want to, and they've got a bit of a design flair, what would you say were the most important things that they need to consider when they're designing their own pub?
I think the difference with pub design in comparison to maybe like restaurants or other sort of more modern buildings, pubs traditionally, I would work with the existing fabric of the building. So if you've got a lovely pub, it's going to have columns, beams, and keep the structure of it the same, because that is the personality of that building. And I think that's one of the reasons I love working with pubs, because you can morph your design around what's there, which is fun in my eyes. I think that's a great thing to be able to do. So if you've got your entrance but you've got this column that you're not too sure about, but you can't take it away because the roof will fall down, use that, put something around it, mesh, planting, artwork, wallpaper, make it a good thing of the pub rather than trying to take it away when you can't physically do that. And I think especially I've worked on quite a lot of listed buildings in the past, and I think that's been rammed in to my head because of that. With if you've got a listed building, grade 2, I've only ever worked on one grade 1, which was quite interesting, you could say. you can't change the fabric of the building without getting permission, so it's a challenge to work around what you've got as existing. But if you try and have fun with that and try and use it to your advantage, so yes, that column or that beam, or we've put planting over things that other people would try and ignore and not have there. But that's the best thing of the pub, isn't it? That it is existing. Pubs are traditional, and yeah, I could go on a tangent of how pubs are the best design that you could do, because it's the British history, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating how pubs have, like, the journey of pubs over the years, because it's where people gather.
Yeah.
Like, it's always been where people gather, and like, even some, now some pubs are getting turned into Indian restaurants, but people are still gathering there, and it's all kind of morphed into something different. But the traditional pub is supposed to have wonky walls and
absolutely
columns and things in funny places, because it's been added to for so many times over the last 100 years, or however many 100 years they get. And
absolutely, I think that if I work into a pub as a brief and I see beams, or I see just the original bones of it, that excites me. I find that quite fun to play with, rather than having just an empty box, because I always think they're most challenging. So actually look at your pub, see what you've got, and think, we can use this column or beams or anything like that to make an area out of this, and then add a screen in or something to make that element you can't remove something that's good. Because that's the great thing about pubs, I think, that you can change the floor finish and everything like that, but you can't change the bones. So you've got the bones of the building, which is the skeleton, we've got the heart, which is the bar, and then everything else that's coming off of it. You're building like it is a person in that pub, I guess. But I'm a bit passionate about it, so.
It's good, it's lovely. I was working with one of the big pub groups a few years ago, and we designed a template for 250 pubs. I can't remember what it was called, but one of the things that we really focused on in that template was the soul of the pub.
Yeah.
And the sort of what makes that pub what it is, and it would be different in every single place you go, because it's like the soul of it's like a community, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's the challenge. So we're working on a brand at the moment where we lead designers, and we did it in the first pub, which was a certain shape, certain size, and then to put that design into other pubs is the challenge. That's where us as designers come in to help with that space planning, more with templates, because it's not a one-off. You've got to do what you've done on this other site, which is only 50 covers, 50 people that can sit and dine in there in comparison to 100. So it's a challenge on our part. But you can have fun with that and sort of area the way that you want it to be. But I think if you've got a one-off, just have fun with your pub, basically, and don't just push the boundaries as best you can, because at the end of the day, it's not the best thing to have to redecorate a wall, but it is just redecorating a wall. So if you want to push boundaries and try, I would say do it, because the worst that's going to happen is that you're going to have to paint over it again, but at least you've tried, because otherwise you'll never push your boundaries to see how great your original idea would have been.
I think one of the things that I'd probably say is that you want to look at the local community and like almost tap into what's that about, like things like art, and if you've got local artists or like that kind of thing. I think that if you tap into that community, that's what will draw people in.
Absolutely. It's site specific, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what I do when I'm doing a project, is kind of really try and go, what's the personality of this place, like what goes on here, and who's standing at the bar. Do we need like a chair for Bob who's always there, and that kind of thing, and just making sure that you're accommodating the end user. Yeah,
absolutely, because I think one of the first things we do on a brief on any of these projects is speak to the person that's running it, and a lot of the time that sort of gets overlooked, and it shouldn't. So if they've not been included within the brief, I'll always have a chat with the person that's running it at that time, because they will tell you the ins and outs of what the issues are, or what people are coming in now. If you need to change it to a new clientele, that will also help you with that too, because you'll know if there's dodgy people coming in from so-and-so, but they all congregate around this area, so how can we make this area better, and how can we draw the right people into here? But I think that is something that's always kind of as a project team, we need to deliver something. They need to run it. So we can deliver the best thing ever, but without that person running it, it's not going to work.
It can't be a successful business.
It can't. Yeah.
Yeah, I always say that you there's 3 elements to a hospitality business. There's the design, which we can do. There's the service, and then there's the offering, like the food or the drink. And if you get all 3 right, you've got a successful business.
Yeah.
But the frustrating thing for us is, like, we can get 1/3 of it right and make that look beautiful, but you've got to have the rest of it, you know. And
absolutely, that's where we trust the clients doing what they're doing right, because I don't envy anyone trying to recruit, because I'm all for the pretty bits, but recruiting staff and everything is a whole kettle of fish, really.
Yeah, I take my hat off to everyone who runs a pub. A lot of my family have run pubs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know how hard work it is.
Yeah.
How much hard work it is.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the design side of things is just have fun with what you're doing. If you're working for a client, listen to your client. And also, I think what is also overlooked as probably one of the most important cogs in the whole situation is the contractor. As a designer, I'm not embarrassed to say I will take their advice. If they're advising me on something and they know more about it than I do, I will take their advice. And I will draw up my detail and say, this is what I want. And if they say, but you're going to get from A to B a lot quicker if we do it this way, fantastic,
or
thank you.
Cost less, or
Collaborate with them, work with them. They know what they're talking about too, hopefully. A lot of the contractors I work with do know what they're talking about, and we trust each other and we have that great relationship. So trust their experience and use it to your advantage, because I use that all the time. I will detail everything up. If they say, oh, that's fabulous, I'm like, brilliant, great job, I didn't need your help. But if I do need their help, then take it. We're a team at the end of the day. That's the way I like to look at it. That client, us as designers, contractors, QS, everybody within making that project work is a team. We all want the same outcome, so work together.
Yeah, I used to work on the manufacturing side. So I used to work for manufacturers who built bars and waiter stations and things. And I used to work with a lot of designers, and that was my biggest thing. Was a lot of designers used to be, I want it how I want it, and I don't care how much it costs. And it'd be like, well, actually, if I make it out of this material instead of that material, it's going to cost you less because I've got that in stock and I've bought that in bulk, so I can get that at a better cost.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. And I think you have to consult with the contractors to get the best result. Definitely. Because of that, and the best price.
Yeah, and I think in hospitality, a lot of these pub sites, whether or not it's a full refurbishment or if it's a sparkle, they're quick jobs. So we've got sites that are 3 weeks, full refurbishment, pergola outside, toilets being done. If I'm honest, I have no idea how the guys actually pull it off. I would not be able to do it myself. There's no denying that. I can hardly decorate my living room in 3 weeks. So work with them. In the hospitality industry, in pubs and restaurants, it's so fast paced. If they've got a better A to B than you, don't be too proud, because all it's going to do is trip everybody up. So work with them. And I think they always appreciate it more. They might talk behind my back. Who knows? I'm a designer. So, but I think all in all, they would like it more as well if you work with them. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, obviously don't let them change your design. I think that's a given. As a designer, you want it how you want it, but if they've got an easier way to do it, more cost effective, quicker way to do it, work with them.
So we touched on accessibility earlier, and I'd like to sort of expand on that. I used to know a lady who was the owner of a company called Giraffe, who was a charity for disabled people. And she said to me that 30% of the trade, 30% of people who go out and eat are disabled, or they're very close to somebody who's disabled, or with limited ability. So if you have a pub or a restaurant that is accessible, and that you're not making it difficult for it to be accessible, because there's legislation and there's making it easy. You will increase your business by 30%.
Absolutely.
And what's your take on that?
I think you want everything. Every person should have the ability to have the same experience as everyone else. I think that disabled people with pushchairs as well, because a lot of time if there aren't ramps, there's a lot of steps. It's also difficult for families to get in and out. So I think trying to make it as easy as possible for everyone to experience the same thing is the end goal. I think it's absolutely a must-have, and I most of my clients feel the same way as well. So any way that they can to improve that for the customers, like putting ramps in the front section or making sure that they have access to the garden. The only issues that we have is normally in listed buildings, but there's always ways around it, and also planners do also want the same thing.
They do.
So work with them to get that. It will just be a longer process. You'll have to do drawings and details and whatnot, but they also want that to be accessible for everybody. So I would absolutely say, if you don't have a DDA toilet, if you don't have a ramp to get inside, you need to be thinking about how to do that, and how to make it so everyone can enjoy it, basically.
Yeah. And
so
I think it's from a business perspective,
yeah,
it's the right thing to do in terms of profitability as well. Like if you can make sure that if Aunt Nellie's coming out for dinner with the family of 10, we've got to go somewhere that's accessible. You're going to get that family of 10 come to you if you've got that accessibility.
Yeah, and I think some situations where we've been tripped up in the past is that we've got dining spaces, but then, as I said before, mid-height furniture works really well to give like an in-betweeny between comfortable but also not so far down that you're sitting on a dining table. Just be very aware of the fact that disabled people can't sit at those. So we got tripped up once before where we had 2 of those within the dining area. We ended up swapping them out for dining tables so that there was more options for the staff to be able to seat people that were in a wheelchair, which at the time of drawing, you're thinking about how it works, people walking past it. So yeah, we get tripped up as well, and then we get reminded on making sure that you do have enough dining tables for people to sit at, because we can get ramps in to the toilets, but if you don't have anywhere for them to go, so there's no spare tables, then you're kind of tripped up on that as well. So just be aware of.
I suppose like the way to kind of stop being tripped up on that is to ask someone. Like if you're in a pub and you're designing it yourself, if you've got customers who have got limited abilities, then ask them and say what do you need and what can we do. And sometimes if you haven't got the space to do a disabled toilet, you can just put some accessible things into a toilet. You might not have the space to do. I mean, you need a 1500 turning circle, don't you, for a disabled toilet with a wheelchair.
Yeah, and the door needs to be larger as well. So there's a lot of factors to.
But if you're in a listed building and you can't necessarily do that, or you haven't got the funds, or you it's not practical to do that, you can still have a sink with a lever on it and a handle with a lever on it. You can have the door opening outwards.
Yeah.
You can have bars, you can have a sink in the toilet, and all of those things. It's not just people. I'm a massive advocate of like disabled toilets, because it's not just people in wheelchairs who use them. It's people with coloscopy bags. Is that the right word? Coloscopy.
I'm not even going to try and say it. I know what you mean as well.
But they need a sink because they need to empty the bag and clean themselves. And there's people who got visually impaired, so they need to have those things. And I just think that so many people go, we haven't got room for a disabled toilet, and they just don't do anything. I think that it's good. It's really, really important to have that nod.
Absolutely. I think in today's day and age, everybody is very much of a equal. We want everyone to be the same. So if you're not giving them the options of being able to, like you say, get to a sink without having to be in a public space almost, because it is in a toilet. If you've got a full toilet, that's not a very nice thing for you to have to do. You just want to make it equal for everybody, really.
Yeah. Sorry, I went off on a proper little rant.
Yeah. And I forgot what my brain was trying to say.
I wanted to ask you about your take on alcohol, because I think that the fact that people are drinking less has had an effect on pubs. What's your take on it?
Interesting. I must admit, I think because my generation, we are definitely still drinkers for sure. But you do see more young people that have gone, and through lockdown, and that their socialising is so different to what our socialising was back then. That the young places, they need activities like a beer pong table or something for them to stay. Whereas when we went out to bars and things like that. You would just be going there for the drinks. So, and I definitely think there's also gone down the route of the 0%. People are a lot more sensible than they used to be. It's interesting. I don't think alcohol's ever going to stop in the UK. I think beers and ales and everything like that is still very strongly led. But also, yeah, we did put in one of our projects, we did have one of them cocktail pumps, and it didn't actually go down as well as we thought it would, because people like to see your cocktail get made.
Yeah.
So then that also is a difference, whereas some people would like it as quick as possible. But actually we found, no, they like to see that cocktail get made and all of the bits and bobs get put into it. I mean, I am a drinker, so I can't say too much about it, really. I like a bottle of wine.
I think you're right, though. You've touched on like the competitive socialising thing, haven't you? Because there's a massive industry now where there's axe throwing and
darts.
like,
yeah, the interactive darts. Who
Yeah.
knew that would be a thing? Yeah.
yeah, and there's so much of that that's coming
Yeah.
through, and that they're
Yeah.
going into pubs, aren't they? And,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting how the social scene is changing.
Definitely, especially in student areas. Like the student pubs, the pubs that we work on in student areas are very different to what we do elsewhere. And that's because we need a gathering spot, but for them to do stuff at the same time, which wasn't so much of the priority. I don't think even 5 years ago wasn't so much the priority, because they would then go off to clubs. Now we want to keep them in that pub. So to keep them in that pub, you give them the same thing a club can do, or just keep them busy really whilst they're drinking. But I can't say I've actually done one of the interactive darts since putting them in the pubs. However much I could have fun with that. Or shuffleboards as well, which we've been putting in. I have played on a shuffleboard. That is quite fun. But yeah.
I need to do that. Put it on the bucket list. Shuffleboard.
Yeah, they take up a lot of room, but they are fun.
Okay, so next question. How would you advise someone to use colour?
Interesting. I think colour is so important within a pub. The decorations can make or break the atmosphere that you put into a pub, for sure. If you're looking for an area that feels more comfortable and cosy, then you want to be bold. Use them dark colours on the ceilings, on the walls, like patterned wallpapers on the walls as well. But if you're looking for something that is more airy, then light colours, and then have a pop of like teal or pink or orange, and just be bold with it. And if your bar, which is the heart of the bar, which I keep saying, if that is already decorated, then choose your colour wisely, because that is what's going to draw the eye. So if you want it to be muted, it's not going to be seen as much. So we've been putting in mustards and brighter colours onto the bar, because that is where we want to draw the eye. And also follow fashions, because they change so frequently. If you look like 5 years ago, stuff, red started coming back in again, and there was greys everywhere, and that's not the case at the moment. So just look into what's working in that area and what type of feel you want and what type of reference house you want to use, because my friend is definitely Pinterest, and I'm sure a lot of designers say the same. Get those images down, have a look at what it looks like, and be bold, I would say. Be brave, yeah. Dark colours, I think, are working fabulously at the moment. And I think dark colours on the ceiling in the right location are great. They give a different feel altogether. They could change the vibe of that pub completely. Yeah. But then on the flip side, if you think you've made a mistake and it's your pub, at the end of the day, it's just paint. It's just paint. There's no walls that have come down for it, so it is just paint. So it can be painted over if you need to go back to something else. With colour, the choice of colour is different to what you'd use in your home. If you're using light blues and cold colours in your home, that might feel quite cold. In a pub, it might not. So it just using, again, working with the fabric of the building. But if you're using mustard, which is all happy and cheerful, in my view, you could use that in your home. But in a pub, it's going to give off a different vibe, isn't it? And pinks are coming into pubs a lot more, and I love it. I think it is feminine, but men love it too. So it's a lovely colour, and the sort of dried plaster look I'm all for that. But yeah, just using the right colours for what you want. Red is warm, I would feel, in the pub sort of side of things. And if you're going to put in black, use it sparingly, or depending on how you want to, what vibe you want to give off, for sure.
Making black beams.
I've done black ceiling before, but that's because we had cable trays all the way along. We wanted just to hide the ceiling, so it was a really tall ceiling, so we just blacked it all out.
Yeah, you can do that with a tall ceiling, can't you? And it doesn't really bring it down, does it?
Yeah, and that it did work, because it hid everything. But it was black on the ceiling, which is quite a lot.
I wanted to ask you about lighting. What's your take on lighting in a pub?
It's funny because as you think of everything separately, you think it's the most important, for sure. And with lighting is very important, and also how you control that lighting, because in pubs, I think wall lights are a must. They make sure that the lighting comes a little bit lower. If you're trying to make it look even more intimate, use table lamps and standard lamps, because then that pulls the light down more as well. I do think you want to be careful with how it's dimmed as well, because I find we put in these lovely pendants and it works with the it's not filament anymore because everything's LED, but that sort of warm glowy lamp. But if you've got somebody turning it down too low, it's going to make everybody's eyes squint. So if there's a dimmer pack, just make sure it's set at a point and put a little line, if it's one of the controlled ones, put a little line on where it needs to go, and make sure you do that at handover, so that then they know that's where it needs to be, because otherwise you'll get it really dark, or on cleaner mode, which is just everything as bright as anything, and that changes the vibe completely.
I think that's one thing that I see a lot of, is that people don't get that level, and it's either too bright or too dark, and I think the other way you could do it is on a dimmer system, so you have it all automatically set for like day and night.
I think it's Tiger mode packs that I've used in the past, which basically are just a button, so you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that's cleaner mode, morning mode, day mode, evening. And I've been on site for 15 hours before setting that, because it was in the peak of summer, so I had to be there at the beginning, and they was very specific on what they wanted. So every few hours I had to say, okay, let's now set the scene, and set the scene up to that, so let's drop it 10%. And so you do need to make sure that you've got the right electrician to be able to do that as well, because they need to be able to code it properly, which I've been shown how it works before, but I cannot remember for the life of me. So but it is important. And for that client, especially in the evenings, they wanted a mode to be able to go from like standard evening to like intimate evening, which I think we dropped it down to like 20%. And without the lamps that we had, which were suitable, which are LEDs, that wouldn't have been possible. So also be very careful with what lamps you're using, because that will affect how far down your lights can go, because if they're not the suitable LEDs to dimming, they'll flicker, and then your issue will just be flickering lights, so you have to have it higher.
Good advice.
Thanks.
I really like using LED strips, hidden LED strips in pubs, because I think it just really creates a real intimate vibe. I mean, things like under the bar, you have to hide them though. It's my bugbear to see like little dots.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you can actually see them, you have to hide them behind something. But I think it just really does things like back bar lighting and front bar lighting, things like that. I think it just really gives it a good touch, especially if you've got a really cool bar, like an old kind of intricate wooden bar or something like that. I think that could be.
And you want to sell the product. So as designers of the pub, I don't get involved too much with what product they use, but you need to showcase it, because if you want them to walk up to the bar and see something and buy it, then it needs to be lit up in the right way. So always have spotlights behind your bar shining down onto the product that they want to be selling, because there's nothing worse than going into the bar and squinting and not being able to see what's over there. We a lot of the time put in illuminated bottle steps. I think that's almost just a standard must-have in every bar that we do, because it just gives that glow and again highlights what you're trying to sell. So and the LED strips, I'm a big fan, and they've got colour changing as well, so that's also a lot of fun. So you can
it's good for things like football season and stuff like that. You can change the colour for whatever time of year it is.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's selling what you want them to sell. So as designers, they want to sell product. If they are a drinks-led pub, their product is the most important thing. If it's food as well, then obviously that's not up to us. That's very much with the brand and what they're doing for food. But we can help sell the products because we can illuminate it in the right way, like you said, so that then you can put LED strips on it or just draw the attention over there. So that is their selling point. That's what they want to sell. So focus on that. Not too much though. Don't go overboard.
Yeah. That brings me nicely on to bar design.
Oh yes, fun one. Yeah.
What would be your advice on bar design?
So bar design's an interesting one. Very much speak to your client. What does your client want to gain from that bar? I've designed and drawn up a lot of bar details in the past, and if they need an ice well underneath, that impacts the products you can put on the front. If they need to have a tall bottle fridge, where does it need to be? Your client knows what they want to sell. Use them to tell you what is needed, and then use that in your design. Because I could absolutely draw 5 bar designs, completely different, but they might be better for different clients. So they need to instruct you on exactly what they need to gain from it, and whether or not they want to have a traditional under counter, so that's the brown board, so timber underneath, which would be a traditional bar, or if they want to go to more bar, so more drinks bar, which is stainless steel. So cost wise it's a lot more expensive, but if they're doing cocktails and speed drinks for a high drinking site, it's very beneficial to go into stainless steel. We don't do that very often. It's a lot more expensive. It's not a traditional option, but in bars, it is. So like drinking bars, it is a good route to go down because they've got like cocktail rails and speed rails and things to help them, and it's all in one hit. So if you're designing a bar, you can either have it so that it's the timber top and timber front, and then open underneath for you to be able to have stainless steel, or a traditional bar would be that you've got partitions all underneath that bar counter so that then you've got shelving throughout. So it's completely 2 different ways to design a bar. So you need to know exactly what they want to gain from selling product at that bar. You could get a lot of advice from people as well though. Like with the stainless steel, there's companies that do that for a living. So get advice and work with them. I've only done one of those before and it was quite expensive, but it fit in perfectly under the bar and they built it to the T. So
we just did one for Chelmsford Theatre last year.
Interesting.
And they had like 4 or 5 stations.
Yeah.
So and that's what kind of one of the things I always focus on is the stations. Like one person has got to serve, and they need to. I think what you've got to think about is they need to move as little as possible so they can do their job properly.
Yeah.
And so if they can stand in one place and serve drinks and use the till and not have to walk very far.
Yeah.
Like whereas if you've got gin on one side and tonic on the other side, that's just completely
not practical.
Exactly. So the ergonomics of like what someone's actually doing behind that bar is so important.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Because you need to look at it as if you are in that bar working, and if it's not practical, then you've not done the job properly. Like it needs to be practical. They need to use it. There's a funny thing with design is that obviously you want it all to be about the design, but if it's not functional, then that's a failed design. So you need to have a really good balance on that. It works both ways.
Definitely.
And just for information, in case people don't know about bars, you need to have a wash hand sink basin in there and a slop sink. That's a must-have. You need to have 2 sinks behind it. If you've got a glass wash, then that might have a sink alongside it. But just for anybody that doesn't know, put sinks behind your bar. They need it.
Lots of sinks.
Just the 2. Just a slop sink and a wash hand basin is a must-have behind a bar. It's needed.
Yeah, I think with things like glass washers and stuff like that, you need to put glass washers where the drinks are cleared to in the bar and things like that, isn't?
Yeah, and also if you've got a coffee machine on the back fitting, which is a sort of standard practice really, it's got to go somewhere. If it's not got its own station elsewhere, put that in the dining end. Don't put that in the sports end. The people in the sports end don't want a coffee, so very much design it where you want to be selling it. So your back
make
bar,
them smell it.
Yes, yeah. Your back bar, you are limited on space, so let's prioritise what goes where. Coffee needs to go in the dining area where it's going to sell, because it's pointless putting it in the sports area. They're not going to be interested unless it's 1 a.m. and they need the hype up
Espresso
coffee.
martini.
Yeah.
What's your take on tills? Because I have this conversation with a lot of people, and a lot of people go, "I must have the till on the back bar."
Oh no!
And I know, right? And I've just had my client in Liverpool Street has put the tills on the back bar, and I'm going client facing. You have to have them on the front, and they're like, no, we have to have them on the back. So that's what you're nodding, saying no, put them on the front.
I personally think your customer wants to see you, and if they're handing over their card, they want to see you. So I would absolutely always put it on the front bar. I'd understand it because product on the front bar is a priority, but I also think the biggest priority is your customer. So I definitely think it's bizarre putting them on the back fitting, and it's not very tidy, not very neat. It's not a selling point, so I wouldn't personally put it on the back. But
I think as well for ergonomics, because you're doing the till and then you're doing the drink. You're not kind of turning around and turning back and backwards and forwards, and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the products on the bar, it's obviously your hand pulls and your tea bars and all of that, but I think selling the gins and the vodkas and the whiskies and stuff like that on the back bit, that's what they want to be looking at, not at the till. And then seeing that that person's name is so and so, and you can see. They don't need to see that. Yeah. And even that with tills, you see a lot of the time that then surrounds got put into a lot of tills on the front counter. I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. Just have the nice clean countertop with then the till screen sitting on top and then everything else hidden below.
So not a cutout.
Not a cutout. I'm not a fan of the cutout, but that's just because it's so definite. Whereas look at the nice smooth bar top with then a till on the top, lovely. But with a surround, it's very much about this is a till location, which it is, but you don't need to shout about it. It's a function. Yeah. But yeah, I'll definitely put it on the front.
Noted. So, short break there. Welcome back to the Interior Design Podcast. Erin is kindly educating us all about pub design, and I'm putting my pen in too. Next question, what about flooring?
So as I've said before, every aspect seems to be really important, and I'm surprised we've left flooring till now, to be honest, because I actually think that's so underrated. People don't notice the flooring so much, but you can direct people with it. So as I've said before with the customer journey, if you're going from the entrance and you want them to walk to the bar, tiled bar walk all the way up to it, that instantly gives people a pathway to get to that bar. If you've not done that and there's just timber everywhere, then you've not got like a clear direction. So you can use flooring to your advantage, absolutely. If you've got a dining area, you need it to be softer. Carpet. I'm not the biggest fan of carpets. They're so hard to choose.
Especially pub carpets.
Pub carpets.
They make me cry.
Yeah, absolutely. There's never a perfect carpet for a pub. They all look fairly traditional, but you can find some. So yeah, carpets in the softer areas, and then absolutely must have hard floor in any drinking area or sports area. Be careful with what site you've got, because they could be quite echoey. I've had that in the past where it's a definite rectangle and we've had to put rugs down just to soften that. So if you've got issues with acoustics, curtains, blinds, use fabric on chairs to try and knock out some of that like echoing around. But yeah, I think flooring's quite important. And
what kind of flooring would you put generally in a pub?
Timber, if I could. A lot of the time we use Carndine as well. So Carndine is definitely a go-to now. They've got a great range. I'm not a seller of Carndine. I just like them.
I'm a massive fan of Carndine.
Yeah, I think it's easy to put in as well, and you need to make sure you have a ply base, but then that makes it level, and then it works quite well. So I put timber floor in.
You can also get acoustic backed Carndine as well if you've got problems with sound.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And then if you've got existing timber, just lightly sand and restain. Or if you've got budget but you want to do real timber, engineered boards, that will still be thick enough so that you can do a few sands over the next 10 years or so. I would say an engineered board or Carndine is what we put in mainly. If we had the budget to use hardwood throughout, we all would, but it's all budget led. I would also say I very much like a tile bar walk around the bar. I think it gives it a sort of like oomph that is separate from everywhere else. But if you look in a lot of country dog walking pubs, there's a lot of the time it's just timber everywhere, and that's that aesthetic. So stick with your clientele, what works with that clientele. If it's not a jazzy tiled floor, don't put it in. So work with what works for the building. An outro floor in the disabled toilet is a must. I think that's some regulation or possibly on that one. Or the vinyls, slip ratings.
The regulation.
Yeah.
It's like R12, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, and that's a really good point about slip rating. If you've got any high traffic areas, check your slip rating. If it's a domestic tile, don't use it. Use commercial tiles. They are commercial for a reason. So you need to make sure that people aren't slipping over or falling over. And entrance matting is always a win because that is going to stop it getting wet everywhere else. But yeah, check your slip rating because you want it to have a high slip rating. Cover yourself. For sure.
Amazing. And furniture we haven't talked about very much either.
We haven't, have we?
What would be your advice on furniture?
Depending on budget. If you've got a lot of existing, I think previously you've spoken to people about reusing items. You can refurbish furniture for sure. Get it all picked up. There's a lot of furniture companies that do that and then reupholster. I think just use your areas quite wisely when you're sorting out your initial layout. Where is your dining height furniture? Where is your poser height furniture? And then we've been using a lot of mid-height as well. It's just the in-between transitional areas. Not sure it's too high traffic for dining, so put in a mid. Then it makes people comfortable still. They're not down in dining height when people are walking through them. And also feature bits like fixed seating and banquet seating wherever you can. If you've got a dining area, you don't want it to look like a canteen. So use your area to, if there's a length of fixed seating, so you can have a nice fabric on the back, fantastic, put that in, because that can give you flexibility of putting the tables next to each other, but also gives you a feature, because otherwise you're going to end up with a canteen that has just loads of furniture loose within it. So zone areas for sure.
So on the seat of the fixed seating, you'd put like a faux leather or something like that, would you?
Yeah, faux or real leather.
Tough.
Yeah, hard wearing. You need it to be, I think it's over 100. I've forgotten the word. Rub test.
Martindale rub test.
Yeah, and also everything within the commercial, it needs to be fire rated as well. So don't use domestic fabrics. Use commercial fabrics. They're for a reason. So and they've got the rub tests as well. So check the rub test. If it's over 100,000, brilliant. If it's lower, use it sparingly. But on the backs of chairs, I've put some 30,000 in before because they're pretty. But don't use it places that people are going to be sit down. It's going to wear really quickly. So use the right fabrics for the right areas. So that's a really good point.
I've done a podcast with James from Sunbury Fabrics, which hasn't been released yet, which will have been released by the time this one comes out. Yeah. So if anyone's interested in upholstery fabrics, we are going to be doing a curtain fabric one as well. So all the BS standards are all going to be in that.
Fantastic. And they've got quite a lot of the I forget what it's called, but the stain resistant ones, which I will say to Sunbury are good because the AquaClean, they could almost have a bomb hit them and they will last. And I haven't tried and tested all of them, but I can say that the ones where I've had a few stains on it and they can be soaked and watered off. So it's got like a vinyl on the back. Not that I'm selling them, but there's like a vinyl on the back so that it doesn't seep in and the stain doesn't stay. So yeah, definitely think about what fabrics you're using for sure. And styles of furniture. If you're going to use 1940s chairs, that's very traditional pub furniture. If you're going to use modern stuff, again, just think of your clientele. Who's going to be going in there? Colours of furniture too. So we could go on a long tangent of what to do.
do it.
But if you're using like the light colours, that's going to be more dining, a little bit more Scandinavian and modern. If you're using mid oak, dark oak, that is more traditional pub. So, and also don't be afraid of using some paint on your furniture. If you can do some rubbed off chairs here or there, that it breaks it up a little bit.
As well, you can refurbish stuff, can't you? It's like you can take a table that's an old-fashioned pub furniture table, old-fashioned table.
Yeah.
And you can paint just the base, can't you? And then change the top and just put a new top on it and just completely refurbish it. But those bases are really expensive, and actually most of them are really good quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a massive fan of that.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm a fan of is putting a poser table near the bar. Because a lot of people gather at the bar, don't they? So if you've got a poser table just off the bar, that kind of stops that crowd at the bar, so people can still access the bar to get a drink. Yeah. Whereas if you've not got those kind of things next to the bar, you tend to have a bit of a gathering. Yeah. People hang around a bit more.
Yeah, and absolutely. I would always put higher furniture close to the bar, so it kind of frames it a little bit, because you do want people and you don't want big empty spaces. Because as you say, you're going to have loads of people just standing around and then it blocks your view. So if you've got poser tables sort of staggered around it, brilliant, because then that's going to get people congregate around those tables rather than what you want everyone else to look at, which is the bar. So I think that's a really good point, that keep high around the bar more so. And nobody wants to sit on a dining table right next to a bar where everyone's standing. It's not comfortable. You're going to have people looking over you and it's going to feel quite uncomfortable. In a lot of old traditional pubs, they do have that sometimes, but it's just, that's not something I would design in for sure. I have to keep mid and poser to around the bar and then have the dining area comfortable so people can feel safe when they're eating rather than somebody looming over them.
Cool.
There's so much we could talk about.
I know.
I could go on all day.
Oh, Erin, it's been so nice to have you here. Thank you so much for coming in as well. We were talking about doing it on Teams and everyone was like, no, I want to come. So she's in the podcast studio.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I hope that you guys have got some benefit out of our conversation today. And you've been educated a little bit about pub design. I hope this is helping you guys learn a bit more, and we hope that you like the podcast.
Absolutely. Sorry if I ramble on. I'm a bit passionate about it, but just have fun with it. This is one of the best jobs you could have because people will appreciate what you do. So just have fun with it. Absolutely. And be bold, and you'll get some great responses from that, I would say. So thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Interior Design Podcast. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe and share with anyone you think might learn from this. Our Facebook and Instagram pages are interiordesign.podcast if you want to follow us. We're on Apple and Spotify and lots of other ones. So if you are on a forum that you don't normally go to, have a look for us elsewhere, and we are pretty much everywhere. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back soon.
Thank you very much.